CSK F1. My name's Rich, and this is your everyday morning daily dose of F1 news. Today we're going to be talking about Jamie Chadwick, we're going to be talking about Daniel Ricciardo, and we're also going to be talking about Colton Herta and Alpine, and also big changes afoot for F1 going into the 2026 season. Good morning, everyone. Please make sure you're hitting that like button on the stream and also subscribing to the channel. Just had to do something there. So first of all, we're going to talk about Daniel Ricciardo over here. It's some comments from David Coulthard. Now, I'm not sure if I've covered these or not. We're kind of getting a little bit of regurgitated news with the off season and whatnot within Formula One at the minute. It's difficult to keep fresh things coming, I suppose, but this is a new article, and it's David Coulthard talking about how it seems like Daniel Ricciardo has gone back to the familiarity of family, basically, with going back to Red Bull, and that he's gone there not because it's easy, but because it's familiar and they'll look after him. And he can sort of rebuild there, and that he will be able to find out, basically, if he's still got it. Coulthard saying he's got a great legacy with Red Bull, and he left to go off and try and make it big elsewhere, but that didn't work, and he's come back to the family. If he can get his mind back to what it was when he was having success, then Daniel has the opportunity to come back. If this opportunity doesn't manifest itself, then that's probably his Grand Prix career wrapped up. What do you guys think to those comments from David Coulthard? Do you think it could be the end of Daniel Ricciardo? Do you think we're going to see him back on the grid? My opinion is I don't really see an opening for Daniel Ricciardo. There are a lot of drivers that you would take before Daniel Ricciardo for a race seat, aren't there? I saw some comments earlier that, I saw that Red Bull, as in the drinks company, have released a sort of box set of Red Bull, the drink, and it's got a picture of Max and it has a picture of Daniel Ricciardo. There is no Checo, which I think kind of signals exactly why they got Daniel Ricciardo back into the Red Bull brand. And they said the same thing when taking him back. They said it was about doing demo runs and it was about marketing and things like that. I think there's an awful lot of freedom for Daniel Ricciardo to do his own thing, because he, unlike what everyone seems to think, he isn't the reserve driver for Red Bull officially. He's there to do demo runs and things, and we've seen other drivers do similar. Kamui Kobayashi was a driver for demo runs and things for Ferrari for years, but he was never an official reserve driver if one of the primary drivers became ill. As for Daniel Ricciardo, seeing him back on the grid one day, I truly do not see where you fit him onto the grid anymore. I really, really don't. Even if you're talking Andretti and Audi coming in, it depends when they come in, because we have to remember Daniel Ricciardo is he 33? And if you think they might not be on the grid for 2+ years, even from now, it's a long time for him to be off the grid, isn't it? It's a long time for him to be off the grid. And Andretti might work for him because of, the American sort of link, and he's very well liked in America and things like that. Who was it we were talking about yesterday? We were talking about yesterday, and we said about getting someone onto the grid. Was it Jack Doohan? You never know. Maybe you could, well, both Aussies as well, but you could see a Jack Doohan, Daniel Ricciardo, Andretti team, but I think they'd probably go an American driver route. But again, see, this is the thing. You can easily talk down getting Daniel Ricciardo back on the grid, and that's kind of the sad thing about it. Good morning, Rob. How you doing? But I just thought I'd bring these comments from David Coulthard to you guys as a starter, because I know Daniel Ricciardo is well liked. I just don't see a route back for him to the grid. Again, with the jury of social media, basically in comments from what I saw yesterday, unrelated to this story, they were all saying Checo's better. So, you know, a lot of people initially were talking about Daniel Ricciardo getting Checo's seat, but I just don't see how that happens. I honestly do not see how that happens. But I'd love to know your opinions on it. Let me know in the comments. We're going to move on now to Colton Herta. Now, this is an interesting piece of news here, and I am going to read a bit from this website, the checkeredflag.co.uk, but they do have direct quotes here. It's not something I've read up to now, and this is all around the Pierre Gasly to Alpine situation, and it's Szafnauer talking about how he spoke to Colton Herta about a potential move to Formula One in a bid to get AlphaTauri to release Pierre Gasly from his contract. Now, I think it was pretty. I think people knew that they were trying to get Herta across, but I don't think I was aware of this. Now, Herta, you guys may not know him because I know I've got a very Euro-British centric audience. So you might not know him, which is absolutely fine. And he's been driving for quite a while now. But he came third in the IndyCar series in 2020. And he's a multiple IndyCar winner. Just having a look now. He's won 4. Okay, so he's won like 5 or 6 races here in IndyCar. And he's driven in the British F3, where he came second as well back in 2016. And he came second in Indy Lights as well. So he's got a bit of a pedigree. And you would say that some people who have come into Formula One have been less qualified potentially. But you know what? Looking back at his resume, I'm not sure. Well, there was a lot of outrage about him not getting his super license, right? But I suppose if he's been driving in IndyCar now this is his 4th year, he should probably be able to get a super license. But it's not as if he's a race winner in IndyCar. He should get it. I was going to go down the route of maybe he shouldn't, but he's a race winner in IndyCar series, and for me that should be enough to get it. But some quotes here from Otmar, the Alpine boss. I called Franz Tost to say, "Can you release him?" And Franz said, "No, this is Gasly." And so I said, "Well, great. I am glad you said that." Szafnauer is quoted as saying by motorsport.com, because the last thing I wanted to hear was, "Yeah, I can't wait to get rid of this guy." He said, "No, I need him. He's a great driver. I don't want to lose him." So that makes more sense if I read it right, but it's to do with the quote. It's basically saying if Franz said, "Yes, you can have Gasly," then it obviously is not very good. But Franz was like, "No, you're not having him. There's no way." I said, "Thank you. With all due respect, do you mind if I call Helmut Marko? He might have a different perspective." I called Helmut, but at the same time, when I go to certain milestones, I would call the Alpine CEO, Laurent Rossi, to say, "Look, this is what I've done. This is how far I've gotten. I now have to go to America to talk to Brian Herter about a release for Colton Herta." And I did a bit of that too. I went and had lunch with Brian and Colton because the release was conditional upon Red Bull finding a replacement they were happy with. Otherwise, they wouldn't have released him. I had no idea that happened. Did we know that happened? Now, we knew AlphaTauri, Red Bull were after Colton Herta. I didn't know that it was Otmar Szafnauer of Alpine flying about the place trying to do that. I'm not being funny. I'm pretty sure that isn't. That's the first time I've read that, I'm sure. So it seems to me that Otmar wanted Gasly for Alpine fairly early on after the Piastri saga, went to Franz. Franz said no, and then he just went to Helmut Marko, and Helmut said, get me someone to replace Gasly, and we can do a deal here. And then Otmar's literally flown over to America to try and put that deal together for him, but for AlphaTauri as well and Red Bull. I had no idea that's happened. That's crazy. That is actually crazy. But it just shows you that there's so much going on behind the scenes that none of us know about, right? That, the deals that go on with trying to get these drivers onto the grid and do you a favor, do me a favor, you'll owe me one, and so on and so forth. That, I don't know. I'm really surprised about that. I feel like I just don't feel like, because the optics of all of that situation at the time was that it was all Red Bull, not that Alpine were doing the legwork on that. But there you go. Please make sure you're hitting like on the stream, guys, and also subscribing to the channel. But there we go. Colton Herta, would he have done any good in Formula One? Will he do any good in Formula One if he comes to Formula One? I don't know. As of right now, I think he might be a decent mid-pack driver, but beyond that, I'm honestly not sure. I'm not really sure about all the outrage about him not getting a super license. He probably should have got one, but I don't think he'd have joined F1 and then been, away winning races and setting the grid alight, but that's just my opinion. Jamie Chadwick. Now, let's move my head over here. She has been confirmed as continuing with the Williams Driver Academy this year, as she's about to make her debut in the Indy NXT series, which I think is a rebranded Indy Lights series, if I'm not mistaken. Indy Lights, from what I understand, is basically the F2 of IndyCar. I'm not sure where I don't know where you'd put it in terms of quality of driver taking part. I don't think it's on the level of F2, but you could probably say it's something, like F3, something like that. I don't know if it would be down to a British F4, but I think it's like an F3 kind of quality of driver. And it's going to be interesting to see how Jamie does in that series. I'm not going to follow it religiously and watch every race, but I will be keeping a keen eye on how she does because, I think it's one of those situations. I think people tell themselves that Jamie Chadwick, if she was in F1, could do very well. And then there's people who think she would do terribly. And there's people who think she's just an average driver. But, I'm of the position where I think if she went into Formula One right now, it would be more damaging for the drive to get more females involved in motorsport, because I don't think she would perform to the level required yet. And I think that would give so much negative press, it would be damaging, because all of the naysayers would come out of the woodwork screaming, oh, I told you so, and they'd make it a big negative thing. The way I see Jamie Chadwick is that she's a bit of a figurehead now for women in motorsport, isn't she? Right? There are levels and there are times and things like that, right? Before her, you could probably say Susie Wolff, right? Susie Wolff doing DTM, Williams got some free practice sessions as well, and she's been a big force trying to get women involved in motorsport, right? Susie Wolff decided to retire, family life, no issue with that. And then you get Jamie Chadwick coming along. She just keeps serial winner in the W Series, honestly looks a class above everyone. And now she's going over to Indy NXT. I honestly think, and I mean this as a compliment, that I think she's a step on that journey. She's breaking down barriers almost for the next generation. Could she be in F1? I don't know. I just think there has to be people that lay those foundations in everything, whatever it is, whether we're talking sports, politics, whatever. You have to have people who come before the real success, if you like. Does that make sense? And I think Jamie is gonna be one of those people that you'll be able to look back in like 10 or 15 years, and you'll see sort of another generation coming through, and they will be citing Jamie Chadwick as an inspiration for them to have started and stuff like that. And this is what I've said for a long time about women in motorsport, that you can't force its success or their success, because you very literally need time. You need time, you need interest, you need popularity for people to join. And none of this, I don't mean any of this at all in any kind. It's a genuine thing that, I want females to be successful in motorsport. As a dad to a young daughter, I'd love her to be engaged because a Jamie Chadwick is involved in Formula One. I just think it's not there yet. I just don't think it's there yet. Exactly, already happening, isn't it? Plenty of young drivers shout her out. There you go. And that's kind of what I mean. You need these people to come through, right? You need these people. Lewis Hamilton definitely has his own influence as well, for what that's worth. and you just need that to happen. So I wish Jamie Chadwick all the best. I wish there was more, like the Williams Driver Academy and Jamie Chadwick. She's been the Williams Driver Academy person for years now. Why hasn't she had a free practice? Is it just budget? I don't know. I think there are many, many people who would love to see her have a free practice. I'd love to see it. Even if she was a mile off the pace, I'd love to see them do it. I mean, free practice one at Silverstone. Come on, Williams. Come on, Williams. They've got all the data, and I think she'd be in the car if she deserved to be in the car. That's you know what I mean. You know what I mean. But I don't know. I hope we do see. I hope we do see her in the car soon for maybe a free practice. Okay, so Pat Simmons. Here we go. This is the sort of final story of today, where we're going to be talking about changes for the 2026 season. I think I'm bringing you guys all the news. All the news is happening, right? And we've got Pat Simmons talking about it. F1 Chief Technical Officer Pat Simmons, been around the sport, honestly, longer than I've been alive. He's been around forever. Well, there you go. He joined Tolman in the early 1980s, Benetton, all sorts, Ferrari, Renault. He's been all over the place, and was involved in Williams and is F1 Chief Technical Officer. The guy is full of F1 knowledge, F1 experience, and he knows what he's on about. Now, they're talking about overtaking and things like that for the 2026 season, and I am going to look at the quotes here because I want to get them right. And Pirelli have said there's a 30% rise in passing with this year's regulations. And he was asked at the Autosport International last weekend about where F1 goes in the future technically and what happens. And this is a quote. This is on GP Fans. I'm not sure who got the quote, but gpfans.com. And he said it's more of the same. We're working on the 2026 car now. The power unit regulations have been released. We're still working on them, but they're pretty well defined. The energy budget on the 2026 car is tight, and that's the way things should be as we look into our low-carbon future. So we've got to have a car that matches it. But we mustn't lose anything that we've found about the overtaking and the close following. And in fact, not only will we not lose that, but we'll improve on it. Because any engineering project is never finished, and the point when you have actually terminated it, you've still got a million ideas, and I think the 2026 cars will be able to race even closer. So that's really good to hear, that they're already looking, well, they're working on the 2026 car now. They worked on these regulations that we're currently enjoying for a long, long time. So hopefully they'll be able to take that data and move forward with it, get the racing even closer, safer, and things like that. I think the vast majority of people, I think, enjoy the new regulations and what they've done for the racing. The porpoising was a bit odd. The one thing I loved about it, honestly, was the aesthetics of the cars. I loved that you could look at a Red Bull, a Ferrari, a Mercedes, a Williams, an Alpine. And if you actually looked at them, I mean, some of them had very obvious differences, but then others had less sort of defined differences, but they were different. And I really like that in Formula One. While I understand part of the idea is to close loopholes because they don't want another sort of double diffuser situation like Brawn, I also like areas of how can you term it? I was going to say intentional vagueness, shall we say, where the designers and engineers can get creative. And I that's one thing I loved about this season. You can say that the Red Bull, apart from probably the first couple of races, was the best package on the grid, right? But the Ferrari was quick, right? And the Mercedes ended a lot better than it started. And they are three very, very, very different approaches. And I love that. And I want to see more of that in Formula One personally. But just to continue here, comparing last year's changes to other recent alterations, Simmons said, "You've got to remember that in the past, there's never been this opportunity. I think the closest that we've ever got to it was in 2009 when the overtaking working group was established, which I was a member of, but it was like a college project. We had very little money to spend. We're trying to do it with 30% scale models in the wind tunnel, which is just not the way to go. This is a proper financed event. We spend a lot of money on this and it's worked well." And I think they're good things. I think these people understand where the sport needs to go, and what keeps people interested is the overtaking, the close racing, okay, the drama, but they fully understand it. And this is the thing. Honestly, I said years ago, before I had any kind of platform, that I think if you around 2008 was 2008 where you had like the McLaren with loads of extra winglets, and it had basically a double front wing where it had the normal front wing, then a bit that went over the nose cone as well. I think it was around 2008. And everyone was saying at the time, we've got too much reliance on aero, but they didn't really do that. It took them like another 10 years to say they were going to do anything about it. And I think the sport is moving a lot quicker than it ever has to combat changes which make for stagnant and processional racing. And that's only a good thing for us as fans, because it just, that's what you want. You want the best drivers to be racing. You don't want it where you have qualifying, you have a bit of craziness on the first lap, and then that's your order for 60 laps. I don't think anybody wants that. I realize you've got places like Monaco and Imola where that really happens, but, I think the sport is moving in the right direction with really looking at what it can do with its regulations to increase passing opportunity. And that's only a good thing. And I'm happy to see it doing that. But I'd love to know your thoughts on this. What do you think F1 should change, if anything, going into 2026? I'm hoping to see if possible, a shorter, a narrower car, a more agile car, because these cars really are huge. If you get the opportunity to see, even if it's like a display one, I've been lucky to a couple of times, but if you see a current generation Formula One car versus an old one, the difference is insane. Last year, when I was at Alpine in their foyer, they had Alonso's championship-winning Renault sat there, and last year's sort of demo car. Honestly, it is huge compared. It's the wheelbase is so much longer and wider, and the car's so much chunkier. Honestly, it is so much bigger. So if they can stay within the safety restrictions and whatnot that they need to, while making the wheelbase smaller, I think that would be great to see. And with Rob agreeing with the smaller car, close to double the size. Honestly, it's massive, mate. I seem to remember them saying something about 600, mid 600 of kilos, maybe low 600s of kilos that those cars used to weigh. These ones are like 800. They weigh a lot more than they used to. And I know that's still light as a car, but you know, it's still a lot more weight in a Formula One car. Something George Russell has commented on fairly recently, actually, saying similar. But they're the changes, or rather, what's been said about the changes for 2026. I will be going live over on Twitch very shortly at twitch.tv/pitlanes. With, I think I'm doing some, what day are we on? Thursday. I'm doing Red Dead Redemption story mode this morning. So please do come along and join me in about 10 minutes, guys. But I will be back here at 9 a.m. tomorrow. There might be a video later on today on this channel as well. But I will be back definitely 9 a.m. in the morning. Thanks so much for joining me, guys. Please do make sure you're hitting that like button and subscribing to the channel. And I'll see you tomorrow. Cheers.